Service is the nation's tax collecting authority. SARS is responsible for administering the South African tax system and customs service. Its responsibilities are to collect revenue that may be imposed under any other legislation as agreed on between SARS and a state entity entitled to the revenue, provide a customs service that facilitates trade, maximizes revenue collection, and protects our borders from illegal importation and exportation of goods, and advise the Minister of Finance on all revenue matters. SARS encourages compliance with tax and customs law to ensure that everyone pays their fair share.
Over the years, we've built a formidable machinery. We've standardized processes, we've automated a lot of our work. There's a great transparency in the system. And day after day, we make a number of interventions to ensure that those who are non-compliant become compliant.
It does so in a manner that does not unduly impede trade, economic growth, and development by imposing excessive and unfair administrative burden on taxpayers, traders and businesses, and to achieve compliance in the most efficient and cost-effective manner. SARS' approach is to promote compliance based on three principles: making taxpayers aware of their obligations, making it easy to meet them, and act against those who break the law. Tax returns must be submitted to SARS on the date given. A taxpayer may apply for extension. People whose income comes from sources other than a wage, such as trade, profession or investments, and companies, are required to make 2 provisional tax payments during the course of the tax year and may opt for a third topping-up payment 6 months after the end of the tax year. People who owe SARS tax are charged interest at a rate as published in the Government Gazette in accordance with the Public Finance Management Act No. 1 of 1999. Unfortunately, there are some people who are not that fair, and SARS have to make sure that they too do their part. For more information on SARS, viewers can contact the call center on 0800 00 7277 or visit their website on www.sars.gov.za.
Joining us now in the studio to discuss all things related to the 2014 tax season is SARS spokesperson Adrian Lackay. Welcome to the show, Adrian.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Now, Adrian, when it comes to SARS, you're mainly in the spotlight during tax season, but can you take us through some of the other services that you provide?
Thank you. This is basically the time of the year where we try to expand our services to as many South Africans as possible, because over the next 4 months, you'll have time to submit your tax return to us. And in turn, because you want to comply with your legal obligations, we want to make sure that we have people going out to you beyond our offices, and that at our 51 branch offices, we have the necessary professional skills and people to assist you to complete your tax return if you need help.
Now, in terms of your approach, you've got 3 basic principles, making sure that taxpayers know what their obligations are, making it easy for them to meet those obligations, as well as making sure that taxpayers don't break the law. What are some of the challenges that you face in making sure that you do meet that mandate?
If you look at total revenue that we collected for the last fiscal year, 899.7 billion, the personal income tax component of about 310 billion makes up more than a third of total revenue collection. So we want to ensure that most of the working people who earn a salary are afforded a reasonable and sufficient chance to present a tax return to us. And in that process, if they want to make specific claims to the fiscus for travel costs, medical aid expenses, retirement annuity contributions, that they also are legally entitled to claim, that they do so in the correct way. So we want to be very or emphasize this year, if you use a tax intermediary like a tax practitioner or a tax consultant, you are still liable for the information that goes onto the return when you submit it. So please make sure that you use accredited people with the necessary skills who are accredited with a professional body and registered with SARS, because if there's any problems and you as a taxpayer encounter any legal issues, you have recourse. We don't want people to submit fraudulent claims because they are legally liable for what is on the tax return. And many people promise people a refund. The taxpayer is promised a refund in exchange for a percentage of the refund that the taxpayer gets back. You must be very suspicious about that. We offer services free to any taxpayer if they need assistance with a tax return. We would need supporting documents. So if you're going to claim medical aid, please keep your medical slips through the year. And those are expenses that your medical aid doesn't cover that you have to pay out of pocket. So keep those slips. If it reaches certain total, you can claim it back. The same with mileage. Many people use their vehicles for business use, in other words, for work. So make a note or keep a register of when you use your car for work. You can claim that mileage back. It's more regulated with retirement annuities, so if you make a monthly contribution, your service provider in financial services will give you a tax certificate for the year. And that will document all the monthly contributions you've made, and a significant portion of that you can also claim back in your tax return.
Now, Adrian, you mentioned fraudulent claims. Let's take a look at tax crime. Can you briefly take me through what it is exactly?
Basically, it's when someone in your name submits a claim on your return, or someone who acts as an intermediary submits the return on your behalf and puts information there where money is claimed, but they cannot motivate or provide, substantiate through proof why the claim was made. So our advice, again, be very careful. If you use, for example, e-filing on the internet and you have a user profile with a password, if you give that information to a third party, they have access to your records, they have access to your banking information, your ID number, and people can commit fraud in your name. So be very careful. We've now regulated that space. So there's 11 professional bodies. They've accredited about 38,000 tax consultants or tax practitioners. So the person you use as an intermediary must be able to give you their tax practitioner registration details with SARS and with a professional body. And that's to ensure that you are safeguarded as the taxpayer.
Now, earlier on, we asked our viewers if SARS is indeed living up to its payoff line at your service. Here are a few responses and questions. We've got Kylie Hlemhlongo, who says, for me, it's a big no because they misinterpreted my IRP5. As a result, now I'm owing them 8,215 because of their mistake. Now, here's a question for you, Adrian. Colin Zuza says, what do I do if I have someone who can't go to SARS? He is too old and there are no branches nearby. They need a tax number.
It would be interesting to get some details of these cases. In places, we have 51 branch offices across the country, but this year we also use 9 mobile units. They've got satellite equipment. They go to rural areas that is not close to an economic center, and they try and assist people. So if in any way we can get the details, we can try and alert them when a service point would be coming to them, or try some other means to assist the taxpayer.
All right, and then we've got a question from Mario Marusele, who says, are foreign shop owner and cell phone stores paying tax? And why is China City or China Mall not issuing out receipts? That's quite an interesting one.
It is. I mean, our appeal to consumers, if you go into a shop and the shop owner, one, demands cash and no cards or check form of payment, if they cannot produce you with a VAT number, for example, on an invoice that looks authentic to you, be very suspicious. Take your money elsewhere and don't buy the products. Do they pay tax? They pay some form of tax. We have a huge informal sector in this country with a big space for informal trading. But value-added tax is a consumption-based tax. So when your small retail outlet buys from a bigger wholesaler, there's 14% VAT that they pay. They contribute to things like the fuel levy. So we have a much broader tax base, technically, than just the 6 million people who will submit a tax return this year. People pay consumption taxes, and that makes a significant contribution to the fiscus. So there is leakage in the informal sector because it's unregulated. It's mostly cash-based, and our challenge going forward with other government institutions is to make sure that we build a tax regime that is sufficiently simple for those startup businesses, that does not present them with obstacles to trade and additional costs for them to trade. The revenue system or the tax administration must be able to accommodate that, but we are dealing with an informal sector, and we have to take account of the challenges that we are faced with currently.
Just quickly before we wrap up the interview, what's the one thing that you can, or the one advice that you can give to taxpayers this season specifically in terms of getting their returns, on time and doing it efficiently?
Well, firstly, we must thank the 1.2 million people who by Friday have already submitted their returns. We saw many more people coming forward earlier to submit in the first month. So our officers are there for any assistance. Try and get your things in earlier. because we always see the rush towards the end.
Yeah.
And then if there's any problems, please contact us. We would really want to help anyone who would want to observe the legal obligations to submit the return.
Thank you so much for your time, Adrian.
Thank you.
That was SARS spokesperson Adrian Lackay chatting to us about all things related to tax. You're watching Your World on SABC News Channel 404. Sports news coming up after the break. Stay with us.